am filming a super exciting video, which is my updated plant tour. If you know me personally or you've seen some of my videos, you know that I love plants and I have a lot of them, but my collection has definitely changed since the last time that I filmed a dedicated plant video. So today I just wanted to go through all the plants that I currently have, along with some tips and tricks. There are three main reasons why my plant collection has changed so much. The first reason is I have bought more plants. Of course, any plant lover cannot resist buying a new plant every once in a while. And the second reason is some of my plants have died. It's so sad, but I am going to be honest about it. Me and my husband were renovating our house for a while, and usually a lot of my plants live in like our living room kitchen area, but while we were renovating this space, there was paint and dust and fumes and everything was torn up, so we decided to limit their exposure to all of that and move all of my plants down into our basement. But the basement is just not the best place for them to be. The windows are really small, and then it's a little bit of a smaller space, so they were having to be really cramped up next to each other. And some of my plants just did not enjoy that experience, and they did not survive. So there's the gist of that. And the third reason why my plant collection has changed so much is a lot of my plants have grown up. I watched my other plant collection video recently, and it was kind of exciting to see how much they actually have grown. So I'll try to kind of include some clips from the last video so you guys can see the difference. But before we start this video, make sure you like and subscribe and comment down below letting me know what your favorite type of plant is, and let's get onto the video. The first type of plant that I'm going to be talking about is probably my favorite category or type of plant, and that is the pothos. I really love pothos because they're pretty easy to take care of. They're really not that picky about their light source or their watering schedule. Ideally, they would like bright, non-direct light, but like I said, they're not that picky, so they can tolerate some low light situations as well. It might not be the best situation for them, like they might not grow as much, but they probably will still tolerate it because of how hardy they are. I have a lot of different pothos. I gathered them all up and I have 9 of them with a couple of different varieties. So I will go through each one and show you what they look like and what they're called. This first type of pothos is probably my favorite type of pothos, and it is the satin pothos. I really love this one because it's a little bit more unique than some of the other ones that I have and have seen. If you look really closely on the leaves on this, you can almost see that it has like an iridescent or just kind of sparkly effect on the spots on the leaves. I'm sure you might not be able to see this on camera, but that's one thing I really love about the satin pothos. And when I first saw this in the store, I really did not think that it was a pothos off the top of my head until I looked at the little tag. And yeah, it's just kind of unique and I really love how it looks. I do have 2 of these little guys. So here are the satin pothos. And when I did pull these out, I did notice that some of my pothos do need to be watered. And one great thing about pothos is they actually tell you when they want to be watered by curling in their leaves a little bit. So that is one thing that I will be doing after this video, is definitely watering some of my pothos. This next pothos is a little bit more of a unique one as well. This is a marble queen pothos. And the way that you can tell the marble queen apart is because it grows these almost white leaves with little green spots. It still does grow a lot of green leaves that are kind of typical to a pothos, but every once in a while it'll grow like a whole strand of those really white leaves. And I will be honest, this pothos I have struggled with a little bit. Like I said, all of my other pothos are super easy to take care of, but when I brought this one home, I noticed that the soil was really staying wet for almost like a week and a half to 2 weeks, and it was just really struggling. It was losing a lot of leaves, and so I decided to switch out the soil for something with a little bit more drainage. So I added some perlite and some bark, and it's been doing really great ever since. I also did notice that this one likes a little bit more sunlight than some of my other pothos. Like I said, my pothos don't really care where they are, but this one kind of does care where it is, and it just likes to be in a little bit of a brighter spot. This one is similar to the marble queen pothos because it has that marble type look on the leaves, but it's just a lot more green than the marble queen. This is my Jesenia pothos. And here is my golden pothos. And another one of my favorite type of pothos is this Pothos Enjoy. And these are a little bit more unique because they have almost like the half white, half green variegation to the leaves. And I do have 2 of these right here in these little hanging planters. And then because I love these ones so much, when I see them in the store, they're a little bit more rare, so I have a hard time not buying them when I do see them. So I did buy this little tiny Pothos Enjoy as well, and I'm excited to watch this one grow bigger soon. And last but not least, this is my neon Pothos, and this one is definitely also looking like it needs to be watered after this video. But this one is super special to me because this is the very first houseplant that I ever got. So I probably had this one for around 4 years, and it has seriously gotten so huge. I think it is around 10 feet tall. The next type of plant that I will be talking about is my rubber plant. And I do currently only have 1 of these, but I am definitely interested in getting more in the future because I would love to get some of the different varieties that have the really pretty variegation in their leaves. This is kind of just your normal typical rubber plant with the really dark green, almost black, shiny leaves. Rubber plants are pretty easy to take care of. They like to be in a spot where they're getting bright, non-direct light. One thing I really love about my rubber plant is when it starts to grow a new leaf, the leaf first comes out like a really dark red color, and then as it gets bigger, it just darkens into the greenish color that you see here. I think that's really cool, so I get really excited when I see a new leaf come out because I get to see that really pretty red color. One other thing that rubber plants really benefit from is just that you keep their leaves clean and not dusty. So I just take a wet paper towel every so often and just wipe off its leaves to keep it really happy. Definitely my #1 recommended plant for beginners is the snake plant, and this is just because it is super easy to take care of and pretty hard to kill. Snake plants ideally would like to be in a place where they're getting bright, non-direct light, but these can really survive in low light situations as well. Like I said, with some of my other plants, it might not be the best place for them, they might not grow as much, but they probably will still survive because of how hardy they are. One kind of fun fact about this particular large snake plant is that I ordered it online on homedepot.com. It has grown a lot, but it was pretty big when I got it then as well. And they had it all wrapped up, none of the leaves were broken, and it's been healthy ever since. I was pretty surprised that they were able to ship a houseplant this size to me so successfully. So if they still have that on their website, I'll definitely try to link it down below. It will probably be a little bit more expensive than when I bought this one. I think when I got this one, it was $17. But if I find the link, I'm guessing it will be more expensive just because houseplant prices have skyrocketed as they have gotten more popular. So here's my large snake plant. And then I also have just a little guy right here as well. The next couple plants that I'm going to be talking about are my dracaenas, and they're also commonly called corn plants and dragon trees. I would definitely recommend dracaenas to beginners. They are pretty easy to take care of. I have had this one for probably around 3.5 years, and I've really never had any issues with it. Ideally, they would like to be in a place where they're getting some bright, non-direct, or filtered light. You want to make sure that they are not getting too harsh or direct of sunlight because their tips will start to brown and they just won't be so happy. So yeah, put them in a spot where they're definitely getting that filtered light or that indirect sunlight, but still a pretty bright spot. They would enjoy that. And then kind of the big defining feature of dracaenas is that they have this pretty woody stalk at the bottom. So if you see this on a houseplant, chances are it's in the dracaena family or it's related. So if you can kind of see that a little bit closer. I'm not exactly sure what this particular large dracaena is called. I just know that it is in the dracaena or corn plant family. But I do have a smaller dracaena that I do know that it is called the Dracaena Song of India. And it's super pretty. It has the really yellow and green striped leaves on it, and it's kind of like a long and spindly one. And then it has the woody stalks, just like a typical dracaena would. This is called a Croton Petra, and it's definitely unique because of all the different colors that it has in it. It really likes bright light, and since it is a tropical plant, it could do well with some humidity as well. Once I get some shelves in my bathroom, I'm definitely probably going to move this one in there because I think it would do really great. It also likes to be watered a little bit more often than some of my other plants. Instead of letting the soil dry out, I just make sure that it's a little bit damp at all times. I also wanted to mention something about the pot that it's in. This is a little bit of a DIY. I just bought one of those really cheap terracotta pots that you can find at any plant store or Walmart or any home improvement store. They're super duper cheap. And then I just drew on it with some white Sharpie or paint pen, and I did this little like mud cloth pattern, and I think it turned out really great. It's a really good DIY for an inexpensive decorative planter. These are my spider plants, and I really love these guys. They're kind of crazy, and I have them in this little hanging planter situation that I got while I was in Bali. Spider plants are pretty easy to take care of. They like pretty bright indirect sunlight. If you put them in too direct of sunlight, their tips will start to brown and they just won't do very well. One thing that's really exciting about spider plants as well is in the growing season, or when they're really happy, they will start pushing out these little babies that are called spiderettes, and they'll be like on a little like stalk, and then there'll be a whole new spider plant on the end. And what you can do is cut off those little spiderettes and propagate them into a whole new spider plant. The next category of plant that I'm going to be talking about are cacti, and my cactus really like to be in a place where they're getting bright direct sunlight. So when I'm finding a new place for a cactus, I just make sure that it's a spot that's getting direct sunlight for a majority of the day. And then when I'm watering them, I'm making sure that their soil is drying out completely in between waterings. And with those two methods, I've had a lot of success with my different cactus, and they've all done pretty great. I did gather them all up right here, and I do have 10 different ones that I will show you. This one right here is a little bunny-eared cactus. And then I have 2 cactuses in this little pot. And I have this little round guy as well. Here is another cute little one, and this one always kind of makes me laugh because it looks like a little cucumber sticking out of the pot, but I think it's really cute. Then I have 2 Christmas cactus, and I'm not actually sure if these are technically cactus, but I am going to include them in this section because they do have cactus in their name. There are a couple of different varieties of these. There's the Easter cactus, the Christmas cactus, and I'm pretty sure also the Thanksgiving cactus. Really the only way that I can tell them apart is by maybe the color of their flowers and also when they're actually flowering. For example, a Christmas cactus is supposed to probably flower around Christmas time, which is funny because this was labeled as a Christmas cactus, but you'll see it's actually growing flowers right now, which is actually closer to Easter. So maybe this is actually an Easter cactus. I may never know, but if you know in the comments down below a little bit more about these type of cactus and what's the differentiating factor between them, I would love to know. I also have another little one in this little mug, and this one hasn't grown flowers yet, but it was also labeled as a Christmas cactus. Then I have this long skinny cactus, and this one is abnormally pokey. I've poked myself a couple of times, and my husband has poked himself a couple of times. You'd think I wouldn't have to say that with a cactus, but this one you have to watch out for. Then I have this other tall guy, and this one I know specifically is called an African milk tree. And I was reading online, and this is actually technically not a cactus, but I am going to be including it in this section because it looks like a cactus to me, and I think it is commonly mistaken for one. But I really love this one because it has a lot of interesting colors in it if you look really closely. Probably my most unique cactus and my favorite is this coral cactus. If you look really closely, you'll see that it has the pink hues in it. My husband got this one for me for my birthday last year, and when I saw it, I was so shocked because I had never seen a coral cactus and I thought it was so unique looking, so he really did a really good job at picking this up. Now that I've showed you all of my smaller cactus, I also have this very large cactus. This is an apple cactus, and I will include some B-roll shots so that you can see the whole thing in the frame, but I don't want to move it around too much right here because it's pretty heavy and I'm terrified that it will tip over and poke me. That happened to my husband a couple weeks ago and it wasn't a pretty sight, so we're going to be keeping it right here. But I was super excited to find this cactus. I've had it for probably around 2 years, but this one was pretty cheap relative to how big it was. It was around $50, which some of you might think that that sounds expensive, but if I were to buy this large of a cactus like a saguaro, it would probably be around $150 to $200. So when I saw this cactus and it was this big, I had to get it. One thing that I was kind of hesitant about buying it is it does have like this kind of weird whitish film on one of the sections of it, and at first I thought it was just like dirty or something and I might be able to rub it off, but when I got it home I wasn't able to get it off, and from what I've been able to find, I think it's kind of almost like a scar tissue on this part of the cactus. So it doesn't seem to harm it, and none of the other sections that it has it, so I just kind of ignore it. If you guys know more about it, let me know in the comments down below, because like I said, I haven't been able to find that much about it online. But yeah, here is my large apple cactus. It's time to talk about my succulents, and I do actually only have 2 succulents right now, which I thought I did have more, but I realized that my succulents were really one of the categories that really struggled with like the low light basement situation that we had to put them through. So there were a lot of fatalities in the succulent department, and I just haven't gotten a lot of them since, but the 2 succulents that I do have, I would definitely recommend for being like some pretty easy indoor succulents to maintain. So this one has been doing really great. I've had this one forever. This is an ogre-eared succulent. And then I also have this jade. Jades are pretty hardy succulents, so they're definitely another one that I would recommend. Here's one of my fiddly figs, and I really love these guys because of their really big shiny leaves. These are really popular in home decor, but they're also really known to be pretty hard to take care of, easy to kill, and just kind of all around finicky. So I do have a couple of tips that I will share with you guys. It really is unfortunate that these are kind of hard to take care of because they are one of the more expensive plants. So you kind of end up spending all this money on them, and then it's really just not uncommon to just end up killing them. So my first tip for you would be to find a good spot for them where they're getting bright, indirect, or filtered sunlight. And then once you found that spot, just keep them there. Because fiddly figs really like consistency. They like to stay in the same spot, get watered the same way, maybe the same amount or at the same time of the week each week. Just all around, they really thrive on consistency and just being in a routine. So that would be one tip that I have for you. And the second tip would be to keep their leaves clean. They can get pretty dusty, so make sure that you're just wiping them down with a wet paper towel every so often, and they will really appreciate that. And then another tip would be if you're kind of troubleshooting your fiddly fig and it's not doing so well, something to try out would maybe be to bottom water it. I've seen a lot of people do this when they're troubleshooting their fiddly figs, and what it means is instead of pouring like a watering can full of water in the top of your plant, you set them in a tub full of water where the water is about 2 to 3 inches deep. And then what the fiddly fig or any plant that you're bottom watering is going to do is it's going to soak up the water from the drainage holes in the bottom of the pot. And just keep it there for a couple of hours, and once you can feel on the top of the soil that it's really saturated and wet, you'll know that it's successfully bottom watered, and what it did is it sucked all the water up from the very bottom to the very top. And I think that this just really helps because a lot of times when you're watering a plant and it's really dried out, a lot of the water just kind of seeps through the cracks and the crevices, and it doesn't really saturate the plant and the roots, and it's just kind of falling out. So when you bottom water, you're just making sure that your fiddly fig is getting a really good thorough watering, and it will really appreciate that. So this particular fiddly fig was not doing so great when I first got it, and it was losing a lot of leaves. I actually had this same one in my last plant video, and I watched it a couple weeks ago, and it was looking pretty sad. but it has been doing really good lately. It probably grows a couple new leaves a month. And I will show you right now, it is actually growing some new leaves right now, right here, which is super exciting. So I have this smaller fiddle leaf fig, and then I also have a larger one that I will show you in a second. This is my large fiddle leaf fig, and it's probably around 7 feet tall. When you're buying a fiddle leaf fig this large, you have to keep in mind that they can get quite expensive. My husband bought this one for me for Christmas 2 Christmases ago, and when I first bought it, it struggled a little bit. It was losing a lot of leaves, but that's pretty typical with fiddle leaf figs just because they're getting used to their surroundings and kind of deciding if they like the spot that they're in. But if you just kind of push forward and keep treating them well, then they will start doing better. This one is doing really great now. It grows about 2 to 3 new leaves per month. And I am really determined not to kill this one because my husband will kill me because it was really expensive. This is my zebra plant, and this is definitely one of the plants that I have struggled with the most. It's actually doing pretty good right now, and it's growing quite a few new leaves, but I do actually have like a plant horror story that goes along with this particular plant. But I was thinking about doing a video of like all my plant horror stories and what not to do so that you guys could learn from my mistakes. But the reason why I think that this one does not so good is because it requires a little bit more humidity because it is a tropical plant. I wish I could put this like in our bathroom or something, but there just really isn't a good spot for it. So if you guys have any like tips or tricks on zebra plants, let me know in the comments down below. It really likes some pretty bright light. I do have it in a spot where it gets some bright indirect or filtered sunlight, and it seems to be liking that. And then this one also likes a little bit more water than some of my other houseplants. I just kind of keep the soil a little bit damp at all times. And one really exciting thing about this plant, if it is really happy, it will grow yellow flowers, and it did happen one time where it did sprout a little yellow flower, and I was super excited. So I hope that I can get this to a point where it will do that again. It's on the right road right now. It seems to be doing well, so fingers crossed. This is my Pelea, and they're also commonly called Chinese money plants, UFO plants, friendship plants, and missionary plants. I was super excited to get this one because these have really only become available in the US in the last couple years. Before that, they were really popular in like Europe and other countries, but they just weren't really available over here. And so I did actually know about them, but I just knew that I couldn't really get it. So when I did see this one, I was super excited, and I have seen them pop up a lot more lately, so I think they are getting a lot more popular over here. But they are also super easy to take care of. They like bright indirect sunlight, and then they also like to be watered pretty often. Just make sure that their soil isn't drying out too much in between waterings, or their leaves will start to yellow and fall off. One thing that's really exciting about Peleas is that they are super easy to propagate. So when they get big enough and when they're kind of doing really well and they're happy, they'll start to push out these little shoots that are called pups. And what it is it's basically a whole new Pelea plant or a baby Pelea plant. And you can just cut it off of the base and propagate it into a whole new plant and share it with your friends. So that's kind of why it's also called a friendship plant and a missionary plant. Definitely one of my favorite plants that I have is my Monstera, and it just has these really pretty, shiny, unique leaves. Monsteras are pretty easy to take care of. They do like pretty bright light, but you want to make sure that it is indirect or filtered so that it's not causing any brown tips or burning on the leaves. Another thing that's really unique about Monsteras is that they have these aerial roots. And what aerial roots are is basically in the wild, the Monstera uses its aerial roots to kind of hold itself up or provide some stability. So they'll wrap their aerial roots around trees and branches and fences, just basically to hold themselves up. But in a houseplant or an indoor situation, you can't really do that. So what you have to do is support your Monstera with a stick or a moss pole. So I have this stick right here that you can see, and then I've tied my Monstera to the stick a couple of times so that it's really stable. And sometimes I will adjust this when I see that my Monstera is leaning from one side to the other. I'll just retie it and make sure that it's standing really straight up. One thing I wanted to mention with this particular Monstera is when I first got it, it really wasn't doing good. It was losing a lot of leaves, and what I found is its soil was staying really wet for way too long, in my opinion. It was probably staying wet for around 2 weeks. And so what I did is I decided to repot it with some soil that had a lot more drainage. I did film a video about it that I will link. Kind of on the same track as my Monstera, this is a Philodendron. And Monsteras are technically actually not philodendrons, but they do get commonly mistaken for them because they do have a lot of the same characteristics and they require a lot of the same care. So for example, this philodendron also has the aerial roots that my Monstera also has. So here's an aerial root right here. Something that's kind of interesting about this particular philodendron is that it's labeled as a split leaf philodendron, but I don't know if I actually believe that because it doesn't have the characteristic split in the leaf that it should. It just kind of has these very uniform, like almost heart-shaped leaves. So I'm not really sure if this was mislabeled, or maybe this is just how the split leaf philodendron looks when it's a little bit smaller. Yeah, I'm not sure the answer to that question. If you do know, let me know in the comments down below. It would be greatly appreciated. A recent plant that I've gotten is this Zizi plant. This was definitely on my list of plants to get, so I'm super excited that I have one now. They're pretty easy to take care of. They like bright or medium light that is non-direct or filtered. I have read that they also can tolerate some low light situations. Like I said with some of my other plants, it just might not be the best situation for them and they might not grow as much, but they can tolerate it. And one other thing that I have noticed about Zizi plants is that they tend to be a little bit more expensive than other houseplants, especially at like trendy houseplant stores. You'll see one houseplant and then you'll see the Zizi plant and they'll be the same size and everything, but sometimes the Zizi plant will be almost twice as expensive as the other one. I'm not sure why that is, but it is just an observation that I've made. Another thing I wanted to mention was just about how I kind of set up my pots and my planters. So I find all these really cute pots everywhere at the store, but a lot of them don't have drainage holes. And that's a really big problem with houseplants because they do want to be able to drain all the way. And so I usually just put like the grower's pot inside the decorative pot, and I don't actually like repot them into the decorative planter until they get like big enough where they need to be repotted, and I'll get a suitable planter for them. So I just wanted to show you this because this is a good example of that's kind of like a tip that I do with my decorative planters. This is my Hoya, and this one specifically is called a Hindu rope plant. There are a lot of different types of Hoyas, and I would love to get more of them, but they're really not that common in the plant stores near me. I know they are really popular in other states, but I don't see them that often here. I really love Hoyas because they have these thick, waxy leaves, and when they're really happy and when it's the growing season, they will actually grow flowers. And I think the Hindu rope plant specifically grows these really pretty pink flowers. So I'm really excited to see if that will ever happen with this Hoya. One thing that I always like to mention when we're talking about houseplants is that a lot of houseplants can be toxic to pets and children. So when you are picking out a houseplant, just make sure that it's either non-toxic or that you can put it in a spot where your pets or your children are not going to be able to get to it. Maybe that's from a hanging planter or a higher shelf. You can also keep in mind that some pets just don't really care about plants. That's how my cat is. She really just doesn't care less and she leaves them alone. So I'm pretty lucky and I can keep like a lot of my plants on the floor and she just leaves them alone, so I'm not really worried about her getting into them and getting poisoned. But I always like to mention that so that you can be aware and make sure that your pets and your children are safe. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my updated plant collection. I do not claim to be an expert on houseplants, but I have learned a lot about them through owning them throughout the years. But if you guys have any tips or tricks for me, make sure to leave them in the comments down below. I'm always excited to learn something new from a fellow plant lover, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!